Ladies and gentlemen of the Podstarz Team podcast, and ladies and gentlemen of the Podstarz Team website, and fans and family alike, my special guest today was a WNBA player. Her name is Cathrine Kraayeveld, and I have so many things to ask her about because upon doing some research on her, I'm very curious about everything that happened. So, Ms. Kraayeveld, welcome to the show. Thank you for being a part of the Podstarz website and a guest on the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to kick it off. I'm not sure an hour is gonna be long enough, but we'll see how we can do. We might have to do another one.
Hey, part twos, part threes, part fours. I mean,
Sounds
we'll do
great.
a series like a Lord of the Rings,
Sounds
yeah.
great. Yeah, perfect.
Whereabouts are you in America, by the way? I'm
I'm right outside Seattle. I mean, Renton exactly, but if you don't know like the Washington area, but it's 15, 20 minutes outside of the Seattle area.
oh, so that's a beautiful lead into my first question, which is I
Yes.
saw that your father was an NFL player for the Seattle
Yes,
Seahawks. What
he
position did he
was.
play?
He was defensive end, and I don't want to get too off track, but I always tell people he's actually, you can do your research because I know I'm sure you're pretty good at that. He's actually the original 12th man. And the reason I say that is because before they use that to refer to it as a, like, clearly it's a penalty, but they never referred it to it as a actual person. And
Right.
like I don't know why it never got like picked up, but back then they were like, "Oh, do you want to coin that? That's going to be huge one day." My dad was like, "Nah, no big deal, whatever." Now it's
Oh,
like because it was
oh,
before Texas A&M, before they were coined, even before the Seahawks, before it was 1978, before Texas A&M, and he was on the field when he wasn't supposed to be, and they made some comment about, "Oh, there goes the 12th man," but it was to refer to specifically to my dad because it was a penalty. I don't know, I can't remember if they end up losing the game or not because it's just through stories through my dad, but something was kind of like a big deal because they never referred to it to an actual player, and then he never coined it. Now it's like, and I'm like, man, they should do like a 30 for 30 or something, but it's like
oh, for
nobody
sure.
knows. It's like nobody, they're like, yeah, Seahawks, Texas A&M. And I'm like, nope, that's my dad. He's like the original like 12th man. So it's kind of a crazy story, but yeah, he played for the Seahawks in 1978, and then he kind of bounced around some other teams like training camps, and he ended up in the CFL for a little bit, and then he tore his Achilles, and I think then he ended up stopped playing after that. But that was like all before I was born. But yeah, it's an interesting story, and you don't hear it very often. But I'm like, how do I get the word out, man? Somebody's got to tell the story.
Well, that's what we're here for at Podstarz. We're here
There
to
you
get the
go.
word out.
There
So
you
let's
go.
let's do it. All right.
Nope.
So I also read that you have two brothers. So right off the bat, I
You.
gotta ask, what is a pickup basketball game like with your brothers? At some point, did they just say enough was enough and they stopped playing with you, or what happened there?
Yeah, I always feel like I've been pretty like, what's the word? I feel like I've always been pretty humble. I don't like to talk about myself. But if my dad was here, he'd probably tell you by the time I was in like maybe eighth or ninth grade, even though they're a lot of time, I could probably beat them because I was a really good shooter. But yeah, we used to go. My oldest brother is like 7 years older than me, so that was quite the difference. Like, I'm in seventh grade and he's only like college age. But my other brother is like 2.5 years older than me. So I just remember like we would go and play and try to beat each other up. And we are not so old that we didn't get along, but close enough where we fought and argued all the time. So I remember making him mad and he would get angry at me and we'd fight and argue about it. And oh, you didn't beat me. And I was like, I beat you, like all this fun stuff. But they didn't play. My brother that's 2.5 years older than me, he played a little bit of baseball in like college, like a, small D1 school, but neither of them really played sports after high school. They were athletic, but nothing, to the point where they're gonna go to college or anything. But yeah, we would have fun. Two older brothers is a lot. My oldest is 7 years older than me. So like I said, it's a pretty big age gap. But being the only girl, I definitely had to hold my own, and all the fighting and wrestling and arguing and all that, it probably helped me in my professional career for sure.
Oh, especially when you're under the rim and you're trying to grab a board or something like that. I can see you fighting.
Uh-huh.
Oh, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure.
All comes in handy. So you went to the University of Oregon, which just happens to be my favorite university as far as like a sports fan.
Go
So
Ducks, go
that's pretty
Ducks.
crazy. Yeah, yeah. Did you actually get a scholarship there, or were you just you did? Oh,
Yeah, so usually typically with the women, I mean, I think it's a lot similar on the men's side, but if you're good enough, as you know, some of the men can jump straight to the NBA, but it just doesn't happen on the women's side. Because if you think about WNBA and how elite it is, I don't would ever foresee an actual high school player being able to jump to that level. So I think college really is good for the women, and especially with the WNBA not being as long, like the longevity as some of the NBA players have, and the money, of course. It's really important, I think, for the women to go to college and at least get the degree they pay for. So yes, I was able to get a scholarship, and I looked at a couple different universities, and actually my first choice was UW because I knew my parents weren't going to be in a position to like travel cross country and come see me play. So I really did want to go to Washington, but before I was really ready to make a decision, they gave away their scholarships, and I was like, okay, well, Oregon's a good school. They had been to like 8 straight national NCAA tournaments, and I was like, well, that's a good school. I could really probably do something well there, and learn and grow there. I actually really wanted to go to Kansas because Lynette Woodard, who is like Hall of Fame all-time scoring leader, even above, I think above Caitlin Clark. But anyway, she was an assistant coach there, and their head coach, famous, I think Marion Washington, I think she's in the Hall of Fame as well. Like, I was like, man, that would be great to play for coaches like that. But it was like, for me at the time, it was far away from home, and I wanted my family and my parents to be able to come support me and see me play. So I did go to Oregon, but yeah, I did get a full ride scholarship to be able to go there, and continuing on into the WNBA after that. So
I mean, having your family there to support you and cheer you on must give you that little extra boost. It's like Gatorade that's not in a bottle, right? Like, watching your
yeah,
mom and dad in the stands, cheering you on.
yep.
I mean, I've never had it, but I'm sure it's very great. I'm sure it's great. I know. Um,
Yeah, it's just, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think wherever you go in athletics, like you always have that small community of support who are supporting the athletes, supporting sports, but it is different when you can have your parents or your family come see you play. So it was definitely, for me at the time, it was like really important that they could come see me play. So that was a big factor in my decision. Excuse me.
yeah. So I'm curious. So I'm from Canada. Our university slash college system is way different than you guys.
Yeah.
What's it like being an athlete with a full ride scholarship, trying to balance college life and athletic life at the same time? I mean, did you find it difficult or was it easy for you?
I think for me personally, it wasn't too complicated because I was always like, my parents raised me as, you be, 10 minutes early or else you're late type of attitude. Like, I mean, my work ethic is probably what allowed me to play as long as I did professionally. So just being, early to practice and staying late and doing all the extra stuff. Yeah, and especially Eugene, I went to a very small town, so the sports was it. We had a legendary, they don't play it anymore, but MAC court, not MAT, but MAC court. It was built in like the early 1920s. I want to say the earliest arena in America. Um, and it was just like really small, but literally like straight up, like 3 levels straight up. So the fans were on top of you. The noise level was just out of this world. Like you really couldn't compare. So having that type of atmosphere to play, I played 5 years playing, was unbelievable. And just having that support, and it's so much different now with social media. But for me, like, yeah, it was great to have a community in a small town college. Sports kind of ran the whole city. It was all it was about. And being able to spend 5 years of my early 20s there was a really great experience. And I mean, to do a great job is when you get a scholarship, you become as an athlete, they have the academic counselors helping you balance your schedule because they know you're going to be practicing and working out. So they really schedule your classes around all that, and it really helps because you're not missing anything, not getting behind. So in that aspect, they do help you out. It's not like you're just thrown to the wolves and you have to figure it all out for
Good.
yourselves a lot of times what happens in life, but I mean, you're young, you're still a kid, really, 18, 19, 20. Like, you don't know what the heck you're doing with
Sure.
anything. So
Sure.
I think they do got good job when you get a scholarship to like really help you figure everything out. And for a lot of kids, you're away from home for the first time. And even though I wasn't that far away, it's only like 5 hours down to Eugene from here. It's still, I mean, you're on your own. You got to do everything on your own, and you're trying to find your way and figure out what you want to study. And then you're expected to play a sport and do all those things and make good grades. And, so it's a challenge, but I think, I mean, at least when I played, 20 years ago, they do a good job of really trying to help athletes out to, set you up for success so you can graduate and get your degree and move on and do something else, if you don't continue playing sports. So it was a
It
great
just
experience, in my
it just
opinion.
sounds kind of stressful because you're right. You
Yeah.
say you have to maintain your GPA because you got that
Yeah.
scholarship at the same time.
Mhm.
You're counted on to produce on the court.
Mhm.
And then you have the wild card, which is, oh, there's a big crazy party going on tonight, and we're gonna be up till 4 in the morning, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, I can't do it. I mean, like I said, I've
Yeah.
never been in that position either, but it couldn't have been different
No.
times.
I mean, luckily for me, that was never my scene. I was never like the partier, like drinking wasn't a thing to me. I just was like, I really like took in the fact I was there to play basketball and get an education. And I still remember to this day, a couple people in the classes I took were like, oh, athletes are so lazy and this and this. And I was like, well, it's really having like a job because, and it's not to like judge or compare, but it's like, if you're going there for school, you have school, you study, you do
Right.
what you need to do, you have all this time like playing basketball, I had all my classes throughout the day, all week. And then I had, 4 to 5 hours of whatever it was, lifting and practice and all this other stuff. So it was really like having a secondary job, except for I wasn't getting paid. So it's,
Yeah.
really like kind of offended me in a way when like other students were just like, oh, you guys are lazy. You don't have to do anything. I was like, I have a job. Like I technically have a job. Like, and yeah, like you said, I have to perform. I'm expected to get good grades. Like I don't think it was anything a struggle of any of the teammates I ever had, but I'm sure there's been players like they struggle in school and you can get your scholarship taken away if you're not able to get the grades and keep the GPA. Like the university can, that's part of what you signed. They can pull that scholarship. So yeah, it is. I think it's more than people realize and think. But I mean, it's so different nowadays with the NIL and all that stuff. But it is a lot, and I don't think people really understand unless you're doing it. But most people, I think they wouldn't take that for granted. So I definitely appreciate the experience I had for sure.
So with that being said, would you do the exact same experience over again, or would you prefer to start it from now if you had the choice with all the differences?
So hard to say because I don't envy any of the college athletes, men or women, who have social media. Just, I'm sure they're just getting
It's poison.
demolished, like with people judging them from this way or that way. I think it's just such because it's already has been 20 years, it's hard to compare and say what it would have been like back then because it was so different. Maybe 5 or 10 years, I can have a better opinion, honestly, but it really is. I mean, I think Facebook came about when I was in college. Like it just wasn't a thing. Like social media
Right.
wasn't like you didn't have to worry about it. Like I got a cell phone in 2000, the year I went to college. Like even that wasn't a thing. I think now having the mindset I had now, I probably would have went to a school more like Kansas, like with more like a bigger history, a bigger like culture. But I don't regret choosing Oregon. And it's just one of those things you look back and be like, maybe I should have went somewhere else. But not that it's a regret. It's just you sometimes wonder. But yeah, I don't know. I don't envy any of the players nowadays who have to deal with all that. But I wouldn't mind making, a couple $100,000. That probably could help me out somewhat.
Yeah, I mean the money situation is just totally different,
Oh,
and it's like
yeah,
watching the way that athletics has transformed in like the last 20 years, and now like you were saying with the NIL deals, I mean that's
yeah,
changed the game for American athletics, right? I mean, like
yeah. I
it's
think
really
it's
changed.
harder to sorry to backtrack a little bit. I
Yeah,
think like it's could be harder for the athletes to focus because it's like I mean, I don't know how it is on the men's side, but especially for the women's side, it's like, oh, I want to, these whatever. It's a lot about fashion and how you look, and you have to look a certain way and dress a certain way. And I was like walking around in sweats all day, every day, and hoodies. And I mean, I was an athlete. I'm like, I'm not dressing up for anything. Like, I want to go to practice and I want to go to class. And so I feel like in that sense, it could be a lot more pressure and a lot more upkeep. Like, I have to look a certain way, I have to act a certain way, and they can't just let their guard down. So I think I know, thinking about it that way, I probably appreciate playing in the era that I played in just because there wasn't all that pressure. I mean, money aside, I mean, money can kind of ruin your life, honestly, in a way if you don't know how to handle it. But yeah, for me, I think I just appreciated playing when I played because it wasn't all that extra pressure and added like sense of I have to be a certain way. You just be yourself, and it wasn't everybody recording everything you said. Oh, you said this 10 months ago, and I'm like, I don't remember what I said yesterday. Like, I don't,
oh man,
you
it's
know
it's
what I mean?
horrible the
So
way it
it's just like
goes. Sure.
it's a rough world, but as everybody knows, the world changes.
Yeah.
You have to kind of go with the flow and do the best you can. So
Yeah. Even nowadays, you go to a grocery store and people are taking pictures, and like you could tell your friend like, I hate onions. The next thing you know, it's on social media. She
yeah,
hates
yeah, yeah.
onions. Like it's just like
I
it's
know it's all those. I
ridiculous.
mean, all those ads pop up on your phone. Like, I didn't look anything up. It's like I swear they're all. I don't have Siri. I don't have Alexa. I'm like, no, it's all spying on me. I don't need Alexa. I don't need Siri so they can spy on me. No, I'm good.
Yeah, no. So take me back to draft day, WNBA. How did it go? How were you feeling? What was your frame of mind?
It was hard to know. Back then, we did an actual training camp. Like all the prospective athletes who wanted to go in the draft. Ours happened to be in New York, which is kind of funny because I happened spent 5 years in New York, but we spent like I want to say like 2 or 3 days in New York doing an actual training camp. So all the coaches from the teams would come and watch,
It's like
and
a
you'd play
combine, like
against each
NFL
other.
combine sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, combine. Now I couldn't think of the word. I'm like, what is the word combine? And then they didn't even do that anymore. It's like if you're drafted, you're drafted, you go straight to team. But you had to like above and beyond your college career, you had to actually go in and then kind of prove yourself like, yes, this is my capabilities. So they did that. And I was told, by my agent at the time, like, oh, you're different. You're 6'4", you can shoot, you can put the ball on the floor, like you're gonna go in the first round, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I didn't go to the actual draft. I was at home. And then it was like it started and I wasn't getting drafted. And I was like, it was like this huge, like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna get drafted. But I ended up getting drafted in the third round. I think the 27th pick to San Antonio, um, which is great. They had a great history already and a lot of really good players I looked up to, and the coaching staff was great. I actually got cut because back then I think they drafted 4 or 5. And I was just kind of the bottom of the totem pole. It wasn't that I didn't think I was good enough. It was just they still do it now. They draft 3 or 4 girls and they might keep one. It's crazy. I mean, that's a whole different subject about expanding, but I got cut by San Antonio, and then about halfway through the season, a couple players in New York got injured, and then I was still like working out and doing stuff, and I got a call to come and work out for New York, and then I got picked up by New York halfway through the season in 2005 and ended up spending 5 years there. So in my opinion, it was meant to be. I'm a bit, like I said, I'm a big believer everything happens for a reason. So I was meant to be, cut and picked up by New York, and I spent 5 years there. In full circle, I actually spent a half a season in 2013 with San Antonio before I actually stopped playing. But yeah, it was kind of a full circle moment. But yeah, the draft itself, it was like, I think I probably ended up crying. I was like so disappointed because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna get drafted. Like, what's gonna happen? Like,
Yeah, they
because
built you up, and now all of a sudden,
yeah, I mean, I got my degree. Like, I had a degree. It's not that I couldn't go out and get a job, but it's like, I'd worked really hard to get to that point. I'd spent 5 years in, at University of Oregon, and even in high school, people were like, "Oh, you can go pro one day." And you just don't know. Life throws you for curveballs sometimes, and you just
sure.
have to deal with it. So, but I mean, it's kind of nerve wracking. It's only like 3 rounds. You're like, I mean, there's a lot of universities, and there's only like 12, 13 teams. You're like, okay, am I going to be one of those like
It's a
40 or
numbers
50
game.
drafted and then get cut? So it was crazy, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm a big believer everything happens for a reason. So it worked out the way it was, and can't complain. I had a pretty good career. So
Well, it's a testament to you though, because a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, but some people, when they got cut, they might have just folded up shop. But you said you kept
yeah,
grinding, like you kept up your
yeah,
game, and you got that call. So I mean, it's a testament to you. I mean, and it's a
I
testament to
appreciate
everyone.
that.
Like just because it's like a bump in the road, don't let that get you down. Keep pressing. So good for
Yeah,
you. And look, yeah,
I
you're right. Like
appreciate
look
that.
how it turned out.
Yeah,
So
one of the big things. Sorry to cut you off. I was
yeah,
just
no,
thinking,
that's
like,
good.
saying getting cut. Like one of the great things about the women's side is the power of the overseas game. Like I know it's different. Again, a whole other subject with the whole Brittany Griner thing, but like we do have a bigger opportunity to go overseas if you can't make it here. So that is a big plus for us on the women's side. Like, hey, you didn't make it to WMA, doesn't mean you're good enough. There's tons of amazing teams overseas to play for. So that was another amazing opportunity for women who didn't get to play, who I know got cut and spent 10, 12, sometimes 15 years overseas, probably getting paid way more than they would here anyway. So, I mean, they're probably like, shoot, I don't care that I got cut. I got to spend 15 years in Italy or Spain or wherever in Europe. So
Yeah,
it's
really.
definitely, choices around all around there. So,
Getting a beautiful check in front of in Greece or Italy
yep.
or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, not too many complaints there. Yeah.
Oh, not too many.
So come down to university, you get your start, you get to New York. What did you find were the major differences between the level of competition? Was it like totally different?
Yeah, I think just the speed of the game and the physicality. I mean, it sounds so silly to say it that way, but that really just it really is pretty cut and dry in that aspect. Like some people, I think some people are like, well, there's got to be more to it, but I mean, it's like going from high school to college and then college to professional in any sport. I mean, you're now not the best on the high school team. You're bringing all the college players together to have the best college team. You're now bringing like, I mean, it's like 0.1% like of the United States, into one small little group of 12, 13, 14 girls.
Sure.
And I mean, especially when you had training camp, it was just like, it was cutthroat. Cause I mean, you could be playing and then the next day you don't have a job. Like it was that simple. Like, well, you had 3 or 4 bad days. Like we can't afford that in the WNBA. It's a summer long. It's only 34, 35 games. You have
Right.
3 or 4 bad games. That's our season, that literally that type of thing. So, just the physicality and just how much quicker the game went and how quick you had to pick things up. I mean, the coaches weren't going to like, baby you and be like, okay, it's okay. Like they're like, this is the play. You better pick it up in the next day because better have it memorized by tomorrow, type of thing. But that's just how it has to be because the season is so short. Those 3 or 4 months crunched into the summer, and it really is cutthroat. So you really had to be on top of your game, like mentally, and I think that's one thing that I was able to stay on top of because I feel like I had a really good basketball IQ. I can kind of see things for what they were, and I didn't have to like I learned from doing it. Like if you show me something on a piece of paper, like I have no idea what you're talking about, but my muscle memory, I could do it on the court like 2 or 3 times and I had it and that was it. So that was one of the strengths that I think I came in with and why I was able to play as long as I was that I did. I wasn't the quickest, the strongest, the fastest, but I mentally and like my basketball IQ was really good. So that was something I think that definitely kept my career going for the time that it did. So
Cool, cool. And
yeah.
like let's right now the WNBA has never been hotter or more
Yeah,
mainstream. It's
agree.
it's as high as it's ever been. Even
Right.
Toronto just announced that we're finally getting
Yeah,
into
I heard
WNBA.
about that. That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so I think that's going to start fairly short. We're doing the vote for the name, so we haven't got a name yet. So
I
we're
know.
Toronto blanks right now, but we'll figure something out.
For sure.
But my question is like, so with the popularity the way it is now, and now that it's constantly it's on talk shows and like Shannon
Mhm.
Sharp and Stephen A. Smith, like it's blowing up. But then I see articles that say that WNBA is still losing money. How is that possible?
I I actually read a little bit into it and I wish I knew where I read it because it was the first time I read it that it actually makes sense. It has a lot to do with how much the NBA owns of the WNBA. Some of the teams are privately owned, but I think 60% of them aren't. And in the original contract with the NBA gets a lot of the revenue that the WNBA is making, even though it's like already been 27, 28 years, they're still pulling in. So it has to do with that. And I don't want to give you like the exact numbers because I don't know, but I finally read an article like 6 months ago and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense because I'm on the side, I'm in the middle because I get it. I played, but I also get, well, how come the women don't make the money? How come this? But the money isn't coming in because it's going back out to the NBA. So it's like
Or
they're making the money now finally, but the WNBA still owes the NBA all this money from all those previous contracts. So I don't know how much longer it's going to take for that number to kind of shift a little bit more so so the WNBA
yeah,
can keep that money, but it has to do with that. It has to do with that the NBA still owns a lot of the WNBA and what they can and can't do. And I think until they can continue to kind of separate themselves a little bit more, it's just going to be like that. And yes, it loses and honestly does, I think, lose millions a year because they're giving the money to the, to the NBA, really. So I think it just has to do with the current presidents and trying to figure out like how can we continue to improve this. And I mean it makes sense. I mean it really does. I mean if you don't have the fan base like it was when I played, we have fan base, but it's you're not making all the money off the jersey sales and all
sure,
that
sure.
you would like the NBA players do. But there's so many little bits and pieces to it. It's hard to put it into like one little category, but yeah, from my understanding, it really does have a lot to do with the NBA counterpart and the money they're still pulling from the WNBA.
Wow, I had no idea. I just
That makes
quickly
sense.
glanced over the article and I was like, I just didn't get it because
Yeah.
like with the addition of especially Caitlin Clark, Angel
Mhm.
Reese,
Yeah.
it's just been so massive, and most people are comparing that rivalry to obviously Bird and Magic from back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you see it that way as well? Do you see them being the Bird and Magic of the WNBA?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to compare because you have two completely different athletes, like, guard posts, whereas Magic and Jordan I feel like they were kind of closer in position. Magic kind of did everything. Jordan was more of a guard, not a post. I mean, although he could post up quite well, but it's hard to compare because you really do have like more of a 1-2 versus like a 5, so it's hard to compare that. But in terms of like having the rivalry and the media exposure, and I mean, as you know, I'm sure social media and the media, they want to pick people to kind of play against each other to build a story, to build people, to bring them more in, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's
Well, because
sports has.
they did have a backstory in college. They didn't really get
Yeah.
along, and they were fighting all the time. Like, so
Yeah.
like it was, I guess it was natural that, when they
Mhm.
both got into the WNBA, they
Yeah.
would just kind of carry that beef over,
Yeah.
maybe not beef,
And
but like that competitive edge. I don't know.
well, yeah, no, I think that it's the old saying, any media coverage or coverage is good coverage. Even if it seems negative, it's still pulling people in to see, oh, what are they doing? Are they, even if somebody has something negative to say, they're watching, right? So I mean, not that you want to hear all the negative, you want to, oh, she's this or that, or she's not good at whatever it is, but it is getting people to watch. So you kind of have to like let some of that stuff slide and let it go. But yeah, and again, I think a lot of that beef and that back and forth, it has a lot to do with social media. Cause like when I played, I may have had beef with somebody who didn't like a competitor, somebody I played against, but nobody knew about it because it just happened on the court. Oh, they're competitive, they're rivals, this and this. But then it's not on social media the next day. Is somebody tweeting something or putting something on Instagram. So again, it's just the world has changed so much since I've played. I mean, I could have probably had something like that with somebody. I mean, not in a negative way, but that's part of being an athlete and somebody who's competing for their livelihood and making the money off of it. I mean, it's just kind of part of it. You're always gonna have players that you look back and be like, oh, I didn't like them, or they were dirty or whatever it is. But you could probably say that for any professional athlete. Anybody will have that one person or two be, oh man, I couldn't stand playing against them. They were my hardest rival. But at this point for the WNBA to continue to bring in more people to watch, I mean, it doesn't really hurt, honestly, to have that kind of back and forth
Sure,
competitiveness.
sure.
And, you know, who knows, off the court, they could be. I mean,
Best
I've had
friends.
people where like I couldn't stand playing against them, and off the court, they were like the nicest person in the world. But that was just their competitive spirit, what they felt like they had to do on the court to win. And there's nothing wrong with that. So,
And let's face it, I mean, people love to watch, people butt heads and fight
yep.
each other. So like,
I mean, what
I
would sports be if you didn't have that like rivalry with some team or some play? It'd be
exactly,
boring, So it's all right.
and I know that one game, I think it was the first game they played against each other, was with the ratings were, sky high through the roof.
Yeah,
Scalpers were charging 3 times the amount, and
exactly.
nobody heard about
Exactly.
this stuff for the WNBA 5, 6, 7 years ago. So they're
Oh,
definitely
yep.
doing something right, or somebody's making them do something right. Who knows? But
Yeah.
either way, it's working for the
Yeah.
WNBA.
Yep.
So,
100%.
what is your overall opinion on the game today? Do you like it? Do you like where it's headed? Is there anything like? Do you love it?
Yeah, I think the game overall, it's great because it's pulling in. I mean, girls nowadays. So the WNBA didn't come around until I was in like eighth grade, I think, till I was like 14, 97. And so for me, it wasn't like, oh, when I'm 7, 8, 9, when I started playing, it's like, oh, I'm gonna play in the WNBA. I just played because I had fun. But now you have girls growing up, their parents are like, oh, I'm gonna put a basketball in their hand. And I'm gonna see if it's something or any sport, you know what I mean? So now it's more visible and more kids are like just spending more time doing it because they really are like, I actually can make a career out of this. Whereas like when I was growing up, it's like, well, I can't make a career out of that. That's not something I'm going to be able to do, until middle school, until it came about. So I think the exposure is great, having more people be involved. And I think as the league continues to grow and expand more teams, it's just going to be great. And I mean, the more teams they can add, the better. I mean, you see girls getting cut and I'm like, man, they're good. They have the talent. It's just not enough space. So the only thing I don't like personally is all like the pregame, like the fashion and all that. I'm like, I think it can take away a little bit from some of it because it's like, I mean, if you're producing on the court, I'm not going to say anything. Like, great, do your thing, be your person, do your thing. But I think it can cross a line at some point because you have to be really careful. You have these little girls watching and
Very impressionable.
like, even though you don't ask for it, I mean, I didn't ask for people to make comments about me or say things about me, but that's stepping into that role in college and professional. That's part of your job. Whereas you have your job. There's people who you have a certain way you have to act and talk on your podcast because that's part of your job. Whereas in professional athlete, we have a certain way, we're
Held to a
we're
higher
role models
standard.
to young girls and boys. And so that's the only part I worry about. It's kind of getting like a gray area, like, hey, like, okay, adults can understand what you're doing or saying, like the dances you want to do, all that stuff, or how you dress. But you got a little 5, 6, 7-year-old little girl like, "Oh, she's like half naked. I should dress like." So it's really hard. You don't get that on the men's side. The men aren't walking out without their shirts on and, flexing and doing this. But the women, it's like expected, to look a certain way or act a certain way. So that can get a little
It's a fine
mushy,
line.
metally, and a gray area. So I mean, the sport itself, it's great. I love that would be the only thing, that it's like can be a little bit tricky and hard is, that part of it. Like I think the women really do have to be careful, like what they're saying and what they're doing, because it is really such a small bubble and you really are kind of showing the world this is what I am and what I represent. And even though you still want to be yourself, but like I said, you're part of a small group now and you just gotta be careful. And it's a harder thing to teach kids nowadays because they are growing up with social media, whereas I didn't. So it wasn't a big deal. Like I'm a grown adult when I have social media, so I know how to act, I know what to do and say and how to be respectful and all that stuff. Where some of these kids, it's like they're born with it in their hands and they don't know any any difference. So it's gonna be tricky as things progress. But the sport itself, the competitiveness, all the eyes that are on it right now, I think it's great. I love how it's expanding, and I can't wait to see it where it continues to grow for sure.
Yeah, and if they had, so I'm not sure how it works either as far as the owners go, but I've heard
Mm.
NBA players who are presently playing saying that they want to invest. I think Dwayne Wade actually has
Yeah,
put a bunch of money into a team. So maybe if it goes that way
yeah,
more, then they can get out of debt and actually start
yes,
making money. So
yes.
I would figure that the franchises, Toronto, and I'm not sure the other one that got greenlit too, that will also help make more money,
California,
right?
not Sacramento. Well, maybe it was Sacramento. No, I think I can't remember now. But anyway, go ahead. Keep going.
No, no,
It's in
it's
California
just
somewhere, I think.
it's just great that you can see the expansion happening. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of leagues where, like it goes the exact opposite, where they're losing
right.
teams and
Yeah.
they just fold. So that's
Yeah,
great.
100%. I think with the women's sports, it's always I mean, soccer and tennis, I mean, it's a little bit different because soccer's always been so high, up on top of their game. But with basketball, I think just finally people understanding, it's been almost 30 years now. I think the other professional athletes seeing, oh, they finally understand where the money's coming from and why we weren't getting paid. Like you said, now people like Dwayne Wade are like, oh, these women deserve. And so they want to get in to help it grow because it's like I said, it was just such a small bubble and nobody was able to invest because the NBA had so much control. But now that you're having private owners, people wanting to come in, now they can do whatever they want with the team and it doesn't depend on the NBA. It's like, well, you're not part of the NBA. I get to do and say what I want. So I think that'll help with other people coming in, but it's all about information. 10 years ago, people didn't understand or have the information and now they're just letting people know, hey, this is what it is, NBA, WNBA, this is how it's intertwined. And now that people are seeing and understanding, now it can continue to grow bigger because people can figure out how to, make it in a way where it can, benefit everybody.
Yeah, a money making venture. I mean, any
Mhm.
business has to make money to stay alive. So,
Exactly.
yeah, let's hope for the best. It looks like it's going in the right direction for sure.
Definitely, for sure.
So, when you were maybe before university, who did you pattern your game after? And so you obviously had a female role model that maybe someone that you liked. And
Mhm.
follow-up question, if you were to pattern your game after a male NBA person, who would you compare yourself to?
Man, I think growing up, because like I said, because it came so not late, but I was already 8th grade, 14. I wasn't really watching women's basketball. Actually, the first sport I watched was football. It was like that's what we watched, Sunday night football all the time growing up. So it was more like I wanted to play football growing up, which was like, oh, that's what I wanted to do. But
We're not
I
there
think,
yet.
yeah, 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 right. Um, I always remember really liking Reggie Miller because even though I like filled out and got a lot bigger and stronger, I was like really like skinny and scrawny and I like loved Reggie Miller. I was able to shoot threes as like a tall player. And so I was like watching him and even though I wasn't a guard, I always watched like I love watching Allen Iverson just like he was just so far ahead of his game in terms of his move and his athletic ability and just it was just like and I was, like, in awe of him, but so I didn't really I honestly didn't have, like, a female basketball player I looked up to because, like I said, it was just coming about, so it was
Gotcha.
more about watching some of those men, and I don't know that I tried to emulate anybody necessarily, but I always, just being able to shoot, like, long distance three-pointers, I really it was, like for whatever, I guess it was just, like, Reggie Miller and then, learning about Cheryl Miller, how she was, like, always better than him. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. The women can be better than their men. And even though it was like brother sister rivalry, but yeah, I think being a like, 6'3.5", 6'4", being able to handle the ball and shoot, I think I always try to expand that part of my game. So it wasn't just, even though I played mostly the four, I mean, I did play a lot of three as well, but I ended up playing a lot of the four. I mean, I'm not like a big, burly, like muscular. I mean, I was strong, but I wasn't, I was like 180 pounds playing 6'4". I wasn't that big, wanting to pound it inside. I wanted to face them and shoot and pull up and take somebody off the dribble. Um, so I just tried to expand my game in that way and try to do what I could to not just be one like in a little box. So I honestly didn't have like one player. I mean, yeah, Reggie Miller was somebody I liked watching because of, my build and being able to shoot. But yeah, I didn't really have like one player where I was like, I gotta be like that player. Cause like I said, it
Those,
wasn't
those are
didn't come
two
about
good
until
ones
I was
though.
in like 8th grade.
Oh, two good ones. I mean, Reggie Miller, I
Yeah.
remember growing up and watching him just decimate the Knicks and
Yep.
watching the
Yep.
fans just so unhappy and
Yeah.
the taunts and all that stuff. That was great. And then
Mhm.
AI,
Yep.
I mean AI,
I
I
mean,
mean
I
that
spent
guy.
5 years in New York, so I get all the the fans. I get how they were. I mean, they booed us, so I get it.
They booed their own team.
Oh yeah, we got booed all the time. When we weren't playing well,
Oh,
we lost. Boo, you guys suck. Like, trade this player, get a new coach. Like they were hardcore, but we played in the Garden. That's just what New York sports was about. I mean, so you didn't really expect anything less, honestly. But it kept us motivated, and we loved our fans loved us, and even though they booed us, but they loved us. They came and supported us, and couldn't complain about playing there. So
what's the Garden like? I haven't been there. It's on my bucket list, but what's it like?
I mean, it's
Does it have the
such.
atmosphere? Does it have the aura?
Yeah, I mean, just such the historic arena that it is, just having, the Rangers and having the boxing matches and like it's just such a historic. I kind of compare it to Mac Court because it was so historic and old and so many events, even other than sporting events, it's the Garden. Like it's, like the Mecca of basketball and
Yeah.
sports. So it's having a history and they don't play there anymore, which is fine. But I mean, just having that history and the fan support. I mean, the arena itself was, I mean, it was kind of gross. Like, they really told us like there really were rats running around and cockroaches. And, we shared a locker room with the Rangers, like in the off season, so those stories are true. It's kind of gross. I mean, I think they've redone some of it now, but when I played, it was like, man, this arena is kind of nasty on the inside, but the history, you can't trade out the history. I mean, it's people now are like, oh, you got to play in the Garden. And I'm like, yeah. So I really take pride in that. And I really am thankful that I had to have those 5 years there.
Did the dressing room have that hockey smell? And we all know that hockey smell. Did it have that hockey smell?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I really remember the smell itself, but I mean, yeah, it wasn't
It
like they
had
were
an odor.
running. Huh?
It had an odor. You just couldn't
Yeah,
like
I mean,
figure
you're
out if it
going
was
up
like,
the like freight elevators, getting in and out of the arena, and you're like, oh, there go all the rats and cockroaches in the locker room, and you're just little stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not mad about it. I mean, like I said, it's
oh,
and so you can't really replace that. And even if I went back today, it's really great, like memories to think about. So I
yeah.
definitely
Because
appreciate.
I've seen interviews with our athletes that say that like when they go to the Garden, somehow it makes them up their game because
Yeah,
they're playing in the Garden. It's got that like special aura to it, and you
yeah,
just feel like you have to like bring your
yeah,
to another level. So yeah,
yeah, 100%,
it's on my
100%.
bucket list. It's like I've been in New York like 4 times and I haven't gone to that arena.
Oh, yeah.
And
Even if you just go to some other event, like I think I went to a concert there one time. It's just different, it was built for that ambiance. So it's great.
all right, I'll get you out of here on this last question, and it's a
No
great
worries.
question. Um, if you were to give some advice to a young lady who knows you or any other WNBA player and like is ready to take their game to that level, what advice would you give them? How would you kind of mentor them?
I would say kind of like the question you asked me, find somebody you want to emulate your game after. I think when I first started playing, I didn't have like video to watch. They weren't on TV. So I would say like, especially as a young girl, watch WNBA, watch other women's sports, like try to learn from them because it is such a small amount of time. Like I think the average for WNBA is like 3 to 4 years. And you think like the
A
Diane
career?
Strauss,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Some players have been playing, 15, 20 years. It's rare, But I mean, the amount of girls who cycle through, yeah, the average was like 3, 4, the average, you know, you got the people who play 1 or 2
Sure.
years, but it's such a small amount of time. So I think for me, my biggest thing was always like my work ethics. I would tell people, even if you are the best player on your high school team and college team, there's always something you can be better at. There's always something you can improve because, you know, if there wasn't, then, you know, I think you would get bored with it. You'd be like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm the best in this and this. But that's what keeps those top athletes playing at the top game is they're always pushing themselves to be better and know that I can always improve on something. Because as you get older, hey, my body doesn't work the same way, but my mind is, and I can still be better at certain things. I can change things to cater as I grow as a person, an individual, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, like how can I continue to change my game? So just as the younger kids now, I mean, just I spent almost every day in the gym, you know, like I always did the extra work. I was always the first to practice earlier, getting shots up, lifting weights, whatever. I was always the last one to leave. But that's because I realized what I needed to work on. So I think just little kids, I mean, you don't the little kids, not so much. You know, go out and have fun, but as you get older, that middle school, okay, what are my weaknesses? What can I work on? Because when I get to that next level, your weaknesses really get exposed because you're playing against everybody else who's the top at their college, everybody
Right.
else who's the best in their WNBA team. So it takes a lot of work. It really is like a job, even though people are like, "Oh, you're getting paid to do it," but it's our job at the time, you know, like so treat it as such. Treat it as any day you really could get fired because it really is cutthroat like that sometimes. So,
Sure.
you know, for me, it was always about having fun because I knew it wasn't going to last as long as like a typical job. But also, like I also worked really hard. Like I worked my butt off all the time. So that's why I feel like I was able to play that 9, 10 years because I didn't take it for granted, I don't think. And I worked really, really hard on my game and I gave up things, you know, like I wasn't hanging out with my friends in high school. Like I wasn't out partying. I was like going to sleep. I
Sacrifice.
was like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock. I got to get up at 6 in the morning, do the morning workout in college, you
Sure.
know? So it's things like that. You want to live your life, you want to have the experiences. But I think as the kids are a little bit younger and understand more, like that's really what you want to do. You have to kind of give up some of that stuff because it's such a small part of your life. Like, I mean, I'm only 42 now, going to be 43 in September. And it's like, that was over 10 years ago. I was done playing and I was in college 20 years ago. And it's like, man, that was like some of the best years of my life. And I'm only 42, you know, I still have so much life to live and it's such a small, but again, it's hard to get kids to understand that because even if somebody came in and I was in middle school and somebody told me that, you know, kids just don't always grasp it, which is understandable, but the ones who really want to make something of it really will grasp onto those little, you know, nuggets of information and advice and they'll be like, oh, okay, now, you know, maybe I speak to somebody in middle school and I say, oh, I don't really understand. And then they get to college, you're like, oh, I remember when this person spoke and they talked about this. Then they'll start to understand it. So you may not grab a hold of too many people, but you will get a couple of those kids who are like serious about it. And so it's just about how much you really want it. You know, do you want this to be your career? Do you want to get paid to play sports and do
Sure.
this or just for fun? You know, so I mean, I just would say work as hard, have fun always, but you really have to sacrifice some stuff, sacrifice your time, work as hard as you can, and, you know, don't take it for granted because you just as silly as it sounds so cliche and cheesy, but it's really like you just never know when your time will be up to play sports because your body's gonna give out at some point and or it's just your time to be up and, you know, then you have to actually live in the real world and find a real job.
Yeah. No,
So
and
play sports as long as you can because you just never know how long it'll last, so
it may be cliche, but it's the
it's
truth
true.
of the
Yeah, it's
situation.
true.
It's never going to change, you know. So
Yeah, it's
have
true.
have
Yep.
fun, put the work in, make the
Yeah.
necessary sacrifices that you have
Yep.
to do to get better. And
Yep.
I'll throw in, put the phones down. Put the
Yeah.
phone down.
Yeah. See, I
Get
didn't
out
say that
there.
because I grew up with
Get
the
out
phone, so it
there.
wasn't fine, but yeah, but kids nowadays, it's just it really can ruin your career, I think, like positively or negatively. It can make your head too big, like, oh yeah, everybody's telling me I'm the best next thing and this, or people are just so mean like nowadays,
Sure.
and it's just
Absolutely.
they cut you down and I mean, you really have to have a good head on your shoulders and be level-headed about it and sometimes that's hard because I'm not everybody like I got raised with two great parents who actually had a level head. And fortunately, my dad did play professional sports, so he can kind of give me those extra insights that maybe some parents couldn't. But you know, I mean, it's just it does take a lot. And I'm a big believer everything happens for a reason. I think my journey, part of my story was meant to play basketball, but that's not, not everybody is going to get that opportunity. It doesn't mean that's the end of the world. I'm sure could have something bigger and better in store for them. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the phone is going to ruin your life. They're all spying on you anyway. Why do you think they put the front facing camera on there, right?
As we're talking on front facing cameras.
Exactly. Like, what are they recording of me? But no, yeah. I mean, you can go on and on about stuff like that, but yeah, I think the kids who really take it seriously and have that drive and that motivation, like, I want to be better. I'm going to keep pushing and keep as hard as it is. Yeah, they'll get the ones that will get there, are meant to get there. And the ones who are like, oh, it's too hard. Then, they might look back when they're 42, my age, and be like, man, I could have done it. But that's kind of part of that line. Some kids are able to push through that and some kids they aren't. But that's okay. It's not meant for everybody. So
sure. It's unfortunate learning experiences can either go one way or the other.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's life.
that's the unfortunate
That's
thing.
life, for sure.
But it's been a great conversation.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yeah.
And like your advice to the young ladies out there, I mean, it's fantastic. And my advice to the podcast community, now you are a part of the Podstarz website, so people can
Appreciate
book you
that.
for their podcast.
I
And
appreciate it. Thank you.
what we're trying to tell the podcast community is you don't have to be a basketball or sports podcast
No.
to book someone like yourself.
No, I would love
Like,
to talk about anything. I got all sorts of life experience to, help people out and give some advice. So
and it's more to spruce their shows up as well, because
yeah,
sometimes these podcasters, they need to breathe some life into their passion.
yeah,
And what better
for sure.
way than to change it up and put on social media, wow, I'm talking to a person who actually played in the WNBA. Next
Yeah,
thing you know, they've got people checking out the podcast, they've got new followers, everyone
exactly.
happy. So thank you so much for
Exactly.
being a part of the Podstars
I
fan. We
appreciate
really
it.
appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time, and all the best. And we will talk very shortly.
Sounds great. I appreciate you having me, and everybody have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, and before we let you go, where are you on
Yeah.
social media if people wanted to get in touch with you?
I'm really, because I have two little kids, so I'm very like far right. I be very careful, but I'm just on Instagram.
Oh,
It's at my last name, so it's Kraayeveld, Kraayeveld. But yeah, I'm just on Instagram because it's like it can get out of control. And plus, I have two little kids, they're only 8 and 5. I don't have a life to like be on sitting on my phone like do. Like I have a lot more. I gotta raise two humans. So, but yeah, I'm just on Instagram, so I'm not really on much social media. But
8 and
yep.
5. I'm so glad I'm done with those. So my oldest is 23 and my youngest just is turning 18. So I'm
Yes.
done. My parenting
Yeah.
duties are over.
There
I'm
you go. You're like, whoop, whoop, I'm done. I'm good. The
never
freedom.
again. I'm good. I'm
So, yep,
happy.
that's where you can see me. And I don't do too much, but I'm always willing to have a good conversation with somebody. So hit me up and let me know where you guys are at.
All right, let's do it. And book her for your podcast at podstars.net.
All right. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Have a
Thank
lovely
you so
weekend, and
much.
we'll talk again shortly.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye.